Hey everybody, this is the Curious Lock Picker, and I wanted to show off this pick of a Medeco Biaxial using a tool and a technique that I haven't seen anybody else use before. I'm recording the audio after the fact, as the audio in the original video wasn't very flattering, and I wanted to give you guys some context to my approach. For those who are unfamiliar, the Medeco Biaxial has two discrete locking mechanisms. The typical way to pick them is to set the driver pins to shear and then to rotate the key pins to the correct angle. This allows a sidebar to engage and for the core to turn. I own two Medeco Biaxial locks and have spent countless hours trying to pick them using this technique. The issue that I was running into when using standard picks is that I was unable to set the driver pins unless the key pins were rotated to either a false gate or the true gate. This goes against traditional wisdom that biaxial driver pins bind before the key pins engage with the sidebar, but that's been my experience in the very least. Peterson makes a tool called the Lifter Pick, which you see in this video. In essence, it is a deep hook with a groove cut into the tip. It's supposed to make the manipulation of Medeco biaxial pins much easier. In my experience, however, it almost always forced the pins in this particular Medeco into a false gate. Try as I may, I've never been successful in getting a key pin out of a false gate without at least one of the driver pins falling back down. The technique that I'm using involved making a custom lifter pick, which is the pick that you see in silver. This pick has an angled cut at the tip, which matches the angle of a cut that you'd see on a typical Medeco key. When I first came up with this idea, I thought it was going to be a cheap and quick way to get a single pick on camera. However, I was really surprised as to the ease, consistency, and potential use of this technique. Keep in mind that as I went through this lock, I wasn't using prior knowledge of a pin's rotational bitting to use the correct pick. Instead, I used whichever pick I had in my hand to find a binding pin, and then I used that same exact pick to try to lift the key pin. If I got a very heavy click, I moved on to the next pin. If the pin felt like it was being overset or that I was scraping against the sidebar, I let go of a little bit of tension, switched picks, and tried to set the pin that way. I used this technique over and over until I dropped into a false set and eventually got an open. I was pretty amazed at the level of feedback that I got using this technique. I was also surprised that there was never any need to explicitly rotate any of the key pins. All of the pin rotations are taken care of by the picks themselves and the angles of the groove that are cut into their tips. The decision as to which pick to use is based on feedback from setting the driver pins to shear rather than any prior knowledge of the key pin's rotational states. I can't make any generalizations about the applicability of this technique for all Medeco Biaxials, but all I can say is that I struggled with this lock for many months, and I never really got an open with 5 pins. Once I made this custom tool and I tried it out, I had my very first open in under 10 minutes. It seems that this method is very consistent. I've been able to open this 5-pin Medeco 4 times now with an average pick time of about 5 minutes. I want to keep exploring this technique. For one, I need to make a third pick and see if this technique is applicable to locks that contain all 3 of the sidebar bittings. I also need to test if I can easily discover which pick to use for each pin using feedback rather than any prior knowledge of the pin's rotational state. If you have any interest in picking Medeco Biaxials, I really do encourage you to try to reproduce this technique and see if it works for you.